Hey friends, welcome to another episode of Synced Up Movement Basics. My name is Kyle, and today we're going to be doing our next video on traveling techniques, but these traveling techniques are going to be turning skill sets. In today's video, we're going to be going over Chainé turns, Piqué turns, and lame duck turns. If you haven't yet, please make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that bell icon so you can stay up to date with all of our videos. And with that taken care of, let's start turning. So Chainé, Piqué, and lame ducks are all standard traveling turns that are really beneficial for us to know when it comes to technique, choreography, all the above. Some skill sets to know before getting into this is going to be your plie and releve, passe positions, and your standard port de bras positions. If you aren't familiar with those, feel free to go check out our previous videos that do cover those, so that way you're familiar with the components that we'll be going over in this video specifically. So we're going to be starting with our Chainé turns, and as we go through each of the turns, I'm going to first go over what the feet do, and then we'll talk about what the arm does afterwards. So to start for your Chainé turn, I want you to go out into a first position turned out, and I want you to take whichever leg you want to lead with, and you want to tendu it out in front of you. Remember, when you do a tendu, there's no weight on that leg that's out. All of your weight is on your base foot. So this is your starting position for a Chainé turn. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to start a rond de jambe as you step out with that leg and push up into a second position releve. So we start in that front tendu, and then we take our foot out to step into a second position releve. My legs are turned out, my feet are apart, and I'm pushed up onto the balls of my feet. That is the first step of your Chainé. From here, all you're gonna do is you're gonna take that base leg that you were just on, and you're gonna bring it to meet the first leg into a closed, turned out first position in releve. So notice I did not go back down and then pull myself up into releve. From this side step right here, I stayed in releve, and then I brought my feet together. From here, I'm just gonna take it back out into that second position to open back up into releve, and I can repeat that process. So essentially what I'm doing right now is explaining how the steps work before we start adding the turn. So we start in that tendu position, I open up into releve second position, close to first, open back up into that releve, and repeat for however many I would like to do. Now that you have a better understanding of the steps, let's talk about how to add the turn. So when you are starting in this position, when you open up into that second releve, your body stays flat to the front of the room. But when I close into that first position, I'm gonna take that trailing shoulder and I'm gonna close it to face the back of the room as I close to first position releve. So to make that happen, I have to pivot on the ball of my foot of that leading leg to allow myself to step into this turned out position in releve. If I don't allow this foot to pivot, you'll notice that when I bring that leg around, I'll create a sickled position with my feet, and we want to avoid that. So make sure that when you take that step and you bring it around, you pivot on that foot to allow yourself to maintain turnout in the releve. Once you get to here, you continue that rotation and you take this trailing leg and you allow it to open and you're pivoting off of the other foot. So essentially Chainé turns is just doing a half pivot on alternating feet. So I step out, I pivot on one to halfway to the back of the room, and then I pivot on other to open back up into that second releve. From here, again, I can just repeat however many turns I would like to do, or I can just come out of it. So I can do however many turns, and then I can step out of it back into a flat foot position. So now let's talk about our arms as we do the Chainé turns. They're actually pretty easy to remember because they match exactly what you're doing with your feet. So we're gonna start in that tendu position, and our arms are gonna go out into a third port de bras with that same tendu leg as the arm that's in front. Yeah, so make sure that you're not crossing and mix matching, but whichever foot is out into tendu, that same arm is in front for your third position. When you take that first step in your Chainé and open up into that second position releve, you're also gonna open up your arms into second position. Yeah, so they match what your feet are doing. When you start to turn and face the back of the room, closing into first, you bring your arms to meet in first position. And then you just repeat this over and over again. I open back out to second, I close to first. And then I repeat for however many turns I'd like to do. So we start in our prep, we go open, close, open, close. Again, making sure that you're pivoting on the correct foot and you're keeping your arm shaping nice and controlled as you go through it. Make it simple and try not to exaggerate that movement because you don't want to throw off what you're doing in your turn. And then everything we've said about hyperextension in our previous port de bras video also applies, because if you hyperextend as you go through this turn, you're going to throw off your balance. It's going to be super hard to control the Chainé turn. So again, we start in third, open to second, close to first, and then repeat as you go through. So the next turn that I want to go over is our Piqué turn, but before we talk about how to do the turn, let's first discuss what a Piqué is specifically. A Piqué is a ballet step that translates to prick, and essentially it's you taking a straight leg and stepping directly onto a releve while keeping the leg straight. You're not passing through a flat foot and then developing up into that releve, but instead keeping that leg straight and just stepping directly onto that balance point as you go through. So when you do this Piqué turn, you have to make sure that you keep that leg straight and you step directly onto that tripod that we've talked about in our previous releve video. So to do our Piqué turn specifically, you're going to start in the same prep position that you did for the Chainé turn. As you go through, you're going to step up into that releve position just like you did for your Chainé, but it's not going to be into a releve second. You're actually going to pull that base leg up into a passe position. So notice that when I stepped onto that foot, I pricked and I piqued onto it by keeping that leg straight, and then I just brought that trailing leg into a passe position. That is the first part of your Piqué turn. You really want to make sure that as you're working through this, that you're practicing that balance idea to where as you go up into it, you can hold it for a quick second and then go back down. If you're struggling with that, just kind of drill the step of the Piqué into the passe a few times until the balance becomes a little bit easier for you. After you take this step up into your Piqué, the next thing that you want to do is you're going to step on that foot that's in passe. So we're up in this releve position. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this leg in passe down my leg to then travel through and step into a plie flat foot position. Yeah, so it's hard to do it slow, but quick demo of that. I go up into Piqué and then I bring it down. Yeah, when I plie that foot and stand and put my weight on it, I extend the other foot out into a side tendu, keeping the leg straight. Once I've done this, all I have to do is push back up onto that Piqué again and repeat the process. So essentially, you're going up into a Piqué passe balance position, trailing that leg down into a plie as you brush that leading leg out one more time, and then you repeat the process. So it's about going up and then back down and repeating it over again. Once you've gotten a little bit more comfortable with the idea of stepping onto that balance and then passing through to that plie, back up again, and finding that consistency in your balance, you add the turn when you're at the peak of your Piqué position. So we start in that prep position. As soon as I step onto that foot, I'm going to turn over the shoulder of the leading leg, and I do one single turn before bringing this leg back down to the plie, and then that causes that leading leg to rond de jambe around to the side. So instead of just going up and it brushing out, because I am turning, the leg will rond de jambe. So I go up and then it rond de jambes around. That way it preps to get me up into another Piqué turn, and I can repeat over and over again. So quick demo of a few Piqué turns. We start in that prep position. We go up and up and. Notice that one leg stays bent the entire time because it's either in passe or plie, and the other leg stays straight the entire time because it's either rond de jambing or going up into a Piqué balance. Now, when it comes to the arms of our Piqué turns, they're the exact same as the Chainé, to where they open up to the front and close to the back. So you want to think, starting in that third position prep, I open up as I go into that prep of the Piqué step, and I close when I'm at the peak, open when I'm back down, and close at the peak again, and just repeat the process. So same open closed idea, making sure we're not hyperextending or anything like that, keeping our arms in front of us and using it to help us get the momentum of our Piqué turn. One thing you want to be cautious of as you're going through your Piqué turn is that leg that's in passe. So right now I'm working my left side Piqué turns, which means that my left foot is the one that's stepping onto the Piqué, and I'm turning over my left shoulder. So my right leg is pulling into passe. but I'm turning over my left shoulder, and because I'm pulling this leg into passe, the tendency I'm gonna wanna do is pull that into a parallel passe and close off my turnout. Because I'm going in that direction, it feels natural to let the knee also kind of drive forward and lead the turn. You want to avoid that. So when we were drilling just the piqué without the turn, we were keeping this passe in an open turned out position as we went through the steps. We didn't pull it through to a parallel position. That's different. So when we do the piqué turn, we want to think about keeping that leg behind us and trailing it to maintain turnout as we go through it. So that was an example of a turnout position. Here's an example of it being in parallel here. Yeah, it's a little bit different of a picture. Not necessarily that it's wrong, but when we're thinking about ballet technique and this specific turn, we want to make sure that we keep that open as we go through the piqué turn and really let the hips open and let this knee trail. And then the last turn that we're going to be going over today is our lame duck turn. A lame duck turn is actually very, very similar to a piqué turn because you're still taking that piqué step and then opening up a leg into passe, except you're taking an additional step before you go up into the peak of the turn. So let me go into detail about that right now. You're going to start in the same prep position you've done for your chainés and your piqués. When we did our piqué, we were directly stepping onto that leading foot up into our piqué position. But for the lame duck, we want to first just take a preliminary step, kind of in a small plie with this leading foot. From here, I'm gonna rond de jambe the trailing leg around, and that's the foot that's gonna pull up into piqué, which is then followed by the first foot. So instead of directly stepping onto our piqué passe, we're stepping around here and then pulling up the back foot. So it's a little bit different. It's so similar that it can kind of get confusing. So just really make sure that you're thinking about step, step, then pull up into the peak of your turn. Along with this, because you're taking 2 steps, by the time you take that second step, you're facing the back, and then the peak of your turn is actually gonna open up to the front of the room. So the facing is gonna be a little bit different as you go through. So we start in this prep position, we go step and up, and then we're in our lame duck position. So really think about using that plie and then piquéing onto that second leg to maintain that straight leg. Then we do plie again. So just like our piqué turns, we had that plie in between each of the turns, except it's gonna be on the other foot. So we see that plie, piqué, and then plie, piqué, stepping on the opposite foot for our lame duck turn. Now, because we're adding an additional step, the turn itself is gonna be a little bit faster. So instead of just going turn and turn, we're gonna be going step, step, turn as we go through. So it'll feel a little bit faster. Step and up as you go through that lame duck turn. And then the last thing is gonna be your arms. The arms are gonna be the exact same, except obviously the facing was a little bit different. But when I open up, my arms open to second. When I'm at the peak of my turn, I close them to first position. So I'll go step and up, and then I'm done with my lame duck turn. So when it comes to executing these 3 turns, we have to think about 2 major things that are gonna help us achieve them successfully. The first thing is gonna be, where is my balance and how do I maintain that? If we look back on a previous video about releves, we talked about making sure that when we're in that releve position, we're putting our weight into the tripod of our foot, which is your big toe, the toe next to it, and the ball of your foot. That's gonna be where you have the most surface area in a technical releve position that allows you to maintain turnout a little bit easier. It prevents us from going into that sickled shape that we talked about and gives us more room to work with as we're going through these turns. So think about that tripod as you're going through. Another thing to think about is your core. It's the center of your body, so it's where all your mass is, it's where it's all centralized. So you have to make sure that you're engaging it to ensure that you can maintain proper posture and control as you're going through your turn. If you don't have your abs engaged, your body will kind of flail and it'll become harder to balance as you go through it. And then lastly, you want to think about your alignment, which is going to be head over shoulders, shoulders over hips, hips over feet. If I have a turn where I'm sticking my tailbone out or I'm pulling my shoulders back, that's going to be so much harder to balance because I don't have that straight line. The more vertical you can be and more stacked you are, the easier it is going to be to balance, which then in turn makes it easier to turn. Now, the second thing you want to think about as you're going through these turns is your spot. The spot is something that is super crucial to any sort of turn because it tells you where you're going and ensures that you keep a straight line path as you're going through your skill sets, whether it be pirouettes, chainés, whatever you're working on in relation to turns, the spot is super important. So what I mean by that is as you're doing a turn, you want to think about picking a specific part on the wall. So let's say that there's a little dot right here on the wall. When I'm doing my turn, I initiate by looking at that dot. As I turn over that shoulder, my head is still connected. I'm still looking in that direction. And then when I turn around, I try and whip it around as quickly as possible to get back onto that spot. And then I continue my turn from there. So as you're doing these Chainé turns, piqués, lame ducks, you want to think about maintaining eye contact with a specific part of the wall or the room or wherever you may be in to make sure that you keep turning in that direction. So a quick side preview of that, I'm going to use the camera as my spot. When I'm doing my Chainé turns, I look at the camera and then I whip my head around to aim back at it as I complete my turnaround, yeah? Even when I'm doing my lame ducks or my piqués, I am still looking at the camera to ensure that I know where I'm going. If I choose not to look at the camera, then my body is going to kind of turn wherever it wants to, and you'll see I start going off of my path, yeah? So really think about that spot and make sure that as you finish the turn, you whip that head around as quickly as possible so you can engage back with that spot and stay in line as you turn. So just to recap everything we've gone over today, we talked about 3 turns, those being the Chainé turns, the piqué turns, and the lame duck turns. We talked about how to properly execute each of them, making sure you maintain turnout, push onto the balls of your feet, all that good stuff. And then we also clarified the arms that are associated with each of those turns. Following that, we went over some specific details on how to maintain balance using our core and making sure we have proper alignment in our body as we go through the turn. And then we discussed our spot, which is crucial to making sure we know where we're going as we do our turns. And that was our intro video on our first 3 traveling skill sets that also turn. I hope you guys had a lot of fun. Please make sure that you're staying safe as you work through these so that way you don't roll an ankle or lose balance and fall or anything like that. Always make sure you're taking the proper precautions and really focusing on the technique of the skill set so you can be as safe as possible as you're learning these. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please make sure to like and comment down below any questions you may have in relation to what we discussed today. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one and have fun turning.